Hello again, everybody. Here we go. We are in Chapter 2, Section 10. Last chapter, or last section. Last chapter, wouldn't that be nice? Last section for Chapter 2. Finding the percent of change. And this isn't too bad if you will just follow things step by step. You should be fine. We'll see if we can get through this in one video. If not, we'll do two. Here we go. You should have this template in front of you. You can find it on my website and print it off if necessary. Chapter 2, Section 10, the percent of change. Okay, so we're finding the percent at which something would go up or down. So it can be an increase or a decrease. And I apologize, I made those lines. I thought they were bigger when I made it, then I printed them and they turned out that way, but get the idea there. In order to find a percent of change, we must know the amount of same words, increase, I'll abbreviate here, or decrease. The amount of change. Okay, so the increase or the decrease is a change. So you have something that its value some way changes, and we're going to calculate how that is, what that is, and extremely valuable for you, particularly if you end up working with money and analyzing if certain investments have done well for you. This is how you do that, and it's really pretty simple, I think. It's basically three steps for you to do. The first thing that you have to do to find the percent of change. This is your how-to right here. You have to figure out what the change is. So let's say find the change. You're finding the difference in something's value. So you're going to subtract, right? Anytime you would find how much something changes, you would subtract its original value minus whatever the changed value is. And number two, after you find the change, you take that amount and divide by the original. Okay, you divide that change, whatever that change was, you divide it by the original because you want to know how much did this change relative to how it started. Okay, so find the change, divide it by the original, and then the last thing, to turn it into a percentage, you have to multiply it times 100, which you should be able to do that in your head by moving the decimal two places, but I have thrown it into a formula here for you. So you can punch it in your calculator if you want to, or hopefully just move it over two places. So before I go to the next slide, I'd like you to add something to your notes over here. And this is just the same thing as a formula. Okay, since we're talking about algebra and variables, this is what that looks like as a formula for you. But I'll just use words. Okay, so to find the percent of change, it's equal to, let's say, the change. You could say C, but I'll go and write it out. Divided by the original multiplied times 100. There it is. You do that, you've got it, and you'll have the value of which, the percent of which something changed. So let's look at a couple examples here, and hopefully it'll make sense to you, and we'll be ready to move along. Bottom of your page. Number one says for 1 week only, Sam's Farm Supply Store had a sale price of $39.99 on their chain link fence. The regular price is $49.99. What was the percent of decrease? Okay, so again in problem solving, you always begin with the end in mind. And this question is asking you to find the percent of change. We know it's a percent of decrease because the value or the price went from $49.99 to $39.99. So if we follow our steps from the previous slide, we have to figure out how much did this change. And that's easy enough to figure out. You would subtract, right, $49.99 minus $39.99. And that's equal to 10. Now, really we should do $39.99 minus $49.99, and we could use negative 10, but we know this is a decrease. They ask us that, and we just want to make sure we label it if we don't use negative numbers. Okay, so we find the change is 10, and then we find the original value. The original value before it changed was $49.99. So we're going to take 10, that was the change, divided by $49.99, Whoops. Ignore that little decimal there. I can erase it there for you because you guys were watching for mistakes, right? If you saw my previous video, I had all those mistakes. You get candy if you find it. So 49.99 times 100. So you can put all that in your calculator. You can put this in there, and you get what, 0.2. Multiply that by 100, and you end up with 20%. It's a 20% decrease. Okay, so there you have it. That's number one. Let's look at number two. The price of a truck was advertised as there's my bad typing right there. I'm going to cross that off. That's some bad writing there by me. The price of a truck was advertised at $19,900. After talking with the salesperson, he agreed on a new price of $18,200. Oh, how nice he was. What was the percent of change? All right, let's go through our steps here. Change. All right, let's subtract it out. The amount of change that happened here was $1,700. It decreased $1,700. And the original price was $19,900. Okay, so to find the percent of change, 1,700 divided by 19,900. Multiply that times 100. You can just punch all that straight in your calculator. It's fine with me. And I rounded it. It came out to, I think it was an irrational number. I think it was 8.5%, or you might say about 9% decrease. Okay, please, you do need to label that. If we're not using negative numbers, which we could, you want to label it decrease. We could do negative numbers. If we did it, we would, the change, since we realize it's a negative change, we would just plug it in like that, and we would have a negative value. Right now, I'm okay with either one, as long as you identify, is this a decrease or an increase that we're talking about? Well, if you turn your paper over, you see this page, percent of error. Now, interesting thing about percent of error, it's almost exactly the same thing. It's the same idea we're finding here. To find the percent of error, the steps are almost the same. This would be like if I said, if I guessed maybe something and we figure out I missed it by this much, we could say, what was that percent of error? Well, the first thing that you have to do is find what the error was, the amount of error. Find error amount. All right, after you find the error amount, you divide it. It's real similar here. It's not the original that you divide it. You're dividing it by the actual. And then you multiply that times 100. So you see the similarities there? You find the error, divide it by the actual, multiply it by 100. Let's look at one. Number one says, hey, you estimate that a building is 20 meters tall. Then you find out it's actually 23. Okay, so you missed it by 3. What's that percent of error? Well, find the error. Now that's just like when we found the change. The error was 3. You missed it by 3 meters. Okay, the actual was 23. So 3 error divided by actual 23 times 100. Put all that in and you come up with, again, I think I had to round this off, about 13.04. So you could say it's about 13% there. 13% of error. Percent of error. And then let's do the last one here and we'll be done. We're at 9 minutes. We can do this. You estimate that Mr. Dunaway is 45 years old. Wow, did you miss it? He's actually 27 years old. What was your percent of error? Well, let's figure out how much you missed it by. A whole bunch. You missed it by 18. All right, way to go. Nope, 27 it is. Okay, the actual age, 27 years old. All right, let's take the amount of error. And I wrote change, didn't I? I should have wrote error. I bet someone was ready to jump on that for a piece of candy. Nope, that's error. Error was 18, the actual was 27. 18, error divided by actual 27. You missed times 100, and we get 66.6 repeating percent, and we'll call that about 67% error. Wow. Better work on your guessing skills if that's what you thought. If you thought I was 45. All right. Get that down. Be ready to do some work tomorrow. Bye.